Oh, thank you in advance for watching our quick tips funding video. This is current climate as it stands around April 2025. Depending on when you're watching this, you might want to fact check some of the information in it. But it's as universal as we could make it. There is some stuff about research, there's some stuff about writing. It should hopefully be useful. Um, all feedback welcome though. So once you've had a watch, anything you want to tell us, by all means reach out and let's have a chat about it. So without further ado, let's get into the funding. Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. You've had an idea, you've got a project in mind, or you need some core running cost. You need to try and find a funder to make this happen. So, three things that we would say that you need to think about here are criteria, culture, and connection. Firstly, look at your funders' information, specifically hunt down their criteria. The criteria will lay down what it is that they believe in, how it is they work, what it is that they are looking for to fund. Funders have different missions, goals, personalities, and this criteria should lay that out. Make sure that you fit it as much as you possibly can. This doesn't mean that you bend to meet their criteria. It means that you keep looking for a funder until you find one that fits. Please also make sure that they fund your legal structure. Please make sure that you have the right number of unconnected people on your board, for example. Just make sure that you're fitting with that as much as you possibly can. Next part of it is culture, and culture is what the funder believes in. And does it match what you believe in? Do they believe in prevention as opposed to cure, or cure as opposed to prevention? What is it that is about their mission that meets what you believe in too? Do they use language that you like? Do they use specific terminology that you align with? Those cultures ideally need to match because it means that you're already on their page and that they can recognize you as being an ally or a strong organization to support. All of these things lead into connection. Do they have an ethical background that you believe in? So some funds, for example, the lottery, that money's gathered through gambling. Even though it's not disseminated that way, that money is gathered through people playing the national lottery. Depending on whether you connect to that concept, means whether or not you would consider being funded by them. Look at what else they funded as well. Do they fund things that you think are strong and relevant projects, or are they funding things that you really disagree with? Whilst yes, there is a lack of funding around and there's not an awful lot of opportunities, there are still some things about the ethics of where you get your money that marks you as being a strong and productive organisation. So ultimately, when you're trying to find a funder, doing your research, digging through various websites, look for the criteria. Do you fit? Do they culturally align with you? And do you feel that you've got some sort of connection with them? This concept is a deeply honest conversation, a situation where you really need to look down at the point of what it is that you do and answer what is often quite a difficult question of so what. This concept of nice to have and need to have is a lot of the make or break of funding at the moment. So here we have two sides of what is essentially the same coin. Nice to have are the things that are often light touch, quite fun, not particularly life changing. Need to have are those services that really do make fundamental change and can change how someone sees themselves, their position in society, sees how everything fits around them and they fit around everything else. We're in a position now where, unfortunately, nice to have is no longer particularly fundable because there is so much competition around the need to have. One thing you need to be able to prove is how what you want funded is a need. And that's the tricky bit. So take into account when you're looking at funders, looking at criteria, and when you're writing what you're about to write, that you're focusing on this notion of need. So now hopefully you have identified a funder, you've matched with their criteria and found a connection. You have then identified that what you're looking to fund is a need to have more than a nice to have. Here are some things to think about that you might need to be able to explain either to yourself or to the funder. These are some quick tips about that early stage of pulling a bid together. Funders never ever want you to be dependent on them. They would like you to be as sustainable as possible and for their funds to enhance what it is that you do or to give you the bedrock in order to explore and expand your service. So through your fund, you need to show how you are going to be sustainable. If you don't know how that is going to happen, you'll need to plan that in advance. And this could be how other fundraising is going to happen, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's people paying for services. All of these things are a plus in the funder's eyes, that you are looking to be able to offset the money that they're giving you with some other money from other sources. When you're coming to put all this together, piece together the detail, think about the practicality of it. When you're sending it to a panel, never ever assume that they know what you're talking about. Never assume that they get your organisation. Never assume that they understand whatever acronyms or jargon you're using. Babysit them through it. Funding panel members come from all ranges of professions, society, from all kinds of experience, and they're never going to all know exactly what you're talking about. The most successful bids that I've ever gone through any panel I've been part of are those that just very simply explain what they want to do and what the difference that will make. Never ever assume that people understand even concepts that you think might be universal, like parenting or being a child. We've all been a child, but childhood is very different to many different people. So never assume that your particular brand of life experience or demographic is a universal known. Think about that link between the outcome and the activities. What we've seen a lot in the past is some really strong outcomes, some really strong activities, and the two things don't align. What they are is essentially a jumble of buzzwords. They are a mixture of different things that, if you put them together in a project, would be impossible. So think about your outcome and actually think about what that outcome might be. What is the difference you're making? So what? What is the point of this project cause situation that you're trying to run? And try and explain that in as few but simple words as possible. I'm going to take you off into an example now, which is taking quite a basic concept that we funders read quite a lot, but actually exploring the why. So here is the very simple statement: we would like to host dance classes, as many people would. Or on the surface, so what? If we think about this from a funding perspective, from a panel member, that feels very much like individual benefit, and that isn't something that funders are particularly keen on doing because there is no wider use of that money. So what happens now? Someone can dance. Unless that someone can dance can make enough money to feed their community, then what is the point? So how does that work in a bigger picture? This is where you start to use your social knowledge, you start to analyze the situation, you start to make educated guesses at what those possible outcomes could be. So to take this statement a little bit further, our dance classes are designed to improve balance, coordination, and have a strong influence on the person's self-confidence. First of all, it's not an ask, it's a very definite statement. Our dance classes are designed, meaning you know what you're talking about, as opposed to being very humble and say, if you don't mind, awfully, we'd quite like to do a dance class. This is strong, fixed, know exactly what's going on. It'll improve balance and coordination, will help people live stronger, healthier lives for longer, may prevent falls, may prevent other incidents, and have a strong influence on the person's self-confidence. People who are more confident are more likely to ask for help, they're more likely to seek support, they're more likely to participate in their communities and make a difference to other people. They are less likely to be a drain on potential health services, they're less likely to experience loneliness and drain other services. All of these concepts are way more laden than how they read, and that's where that social context and that social knowledge comes in. So think about how we can go from the distance between we'd like to host dance classes to actually making a very strong case as to why this should happen and why these classes should exist. Because what we're moving towards is the notion of this is a need versus a want. If we use the notion of dance classes as the continued example, dance classes would be a want, especially free dance classes. It'd be great, we'll have a bit of a boogie, be nice, we can all go home feeling energized. But actually, what does that do? Whereas if a specific group of people need dance classes because they need their self-confidence boosted, they need their balance and coordination worked on, then dance is the tool. Doesn't matter what the activity is, as long as the outcome is that self-confidence and that balance. So need is the actual activity as a tool versus want as the activity for activity's sake. And if you're having to explain the difference between the two, it's thinking about what is a need, what will this person's life be lesser with or lesser without having it. So make sure that you're putting everything into that notion of need, because there's lots of things we want, especially for free, that we just can't have because of the system. So think about those differences. Going back to our funding tips, now that we've created that idea of this is the so what, how does that so what have some sort of impact? So where we tipped from impact into explanation or explanation into impact is we create self-confidence. The impact is that the self-confident people are more likely to participate in their community, more likely to take on other actions, etc. It's that difference between, well, now what do you do with this information? Now what do you do with the ability to be more confident? And that's where the difference between need and want and outcome and activity, etc., works. So please think about the fact that you're needing to consider what the clear impact is, because that's what a panel's looking for. Panels have a duty to the donor or the public, whoever's money it happens to be, to spend it justly and effectively. And if there is any uncertainty, then they are more likely to err on not funding than they are to fund. As part of that discussion, please do know that it's not always you, and that there are multiple reasons why panels reject applications, and that's that they're overwhelmed, that they had a fixed amount of money that they've already allocated, that they've just had to make a difficult choice between one or two different bids. There are so many things that stand in your way that it's very hard to not take it personally, but just it's part of the sector, that resilience of putting bid after bid after bid, and maybe only getting one success out of every 7 bids is just kind of part of it. And that patience and understanding and that grace that can be used to take the feedback, to try again. Any decent funder will give you some sort of feedback, even if it's a generic, you know what, we were oversubscribed and we're really sorry, but we can't. That then says to you, right, we're not the level of need to have that funder's interested in. So we've got to go somewhere else. We've got to go somewhere smaller. We've got to go somewhere more targeted. It's take that as a hint. Don't just keep ploughing back at the same organisation over and over again and demanding that they fund you. Take those feedback, move on, try again, bounce back. It is difficult. It requires a lot of resilience, but by all means, come to us at WVA and have a rant. It's also very fine. But it's part of the game. And do take into account that yes, funding bids take a while to write. Equally, funders close things at random because they've either run out of money or it doesn't work anymore or whatever the reason is. So sometimes you could write something and then just to be told, sorry, we've just closed this fund. It's a unfortunate thick skin that is involved, and it's about just being patient and being gracious. So, believe it or not, the hard work is done. By the time you've got to this point where you're actually writing down in the application form what it is that you want to do, is the easy bit, because you've did all the pre-work, you've researched, you've spoken to people, you've pulled together ideas, you've written a budget, you've costed things out, you've got all this stuff ready to go, and now you just need to type it into a form. So actually, here we are at what is the nice easy bit. Allegedly. One thing to think about here, do check out how that funder wants that application. So some have a form. A lot of them now have digital forms. Best idea is to check it out. If you need to make an account, find the questions, paste them into some other document, write them down, whatever works for you, answer them that way. For 2 reasons. One, I say through bitter experience, there is nothing more frustrating than filling out a form and then the internet glitches or something doesn't all align and you've lost everything you've written. Secondly, your point here is to create a document that you can use more than once. You've put a lot of work into that, and especially the stuff about explaining your organization and the demographic and all those kind of layered elements. Don't lose that by dumping it in a form and then never getting it back. So put it in another document, copy and paste over. It just makes life slightly easier in the long term. Sustainability is going to be a big part of your bid, so think about where it is best placed, explained, depending on what that funder is asking for. So if you get a nice detailed budget space, that's where you can put in the other funds that are coming in and really show how your income is quite diverse. If you don't have such a big space, you're going to have to write it in another question. Think about where that might be best placed. It's going to depend on the application, but do mention it somewhere. Be realistic, but be also necessary. So think about what you can actually achieve and what also the people you are looking to support can achieve as well. There is no point in starting a project from a position of fail. So having really high numbers of people that you're looking to support, or really deep and complex outcomes that you know potentially can't be delivered. So think about the realism of that. Think about how you explain that in a logical and just fashion, but also don't shy away from the level of challenge that people live with. Don't underplay anything. Make sure that the panel really understands what the problem is that you are trying to fix or face or relieve. So it's about being practical and also quite blunt at the same time. This connects to the notion of it's not always feasible, or actually you may see more rejections than acceptances, but that element that public services has reduced has had a really big toll on community funders, because there are things that have always sort of straddled the fine line between especially public and community sectors. And often there are situations where you find that you're not being funded because they've had to put money into more theoretically pressing things that are public sector, not public sector. Public sector, I was right. Public sector challenges. I was going to cut that out, but you know what? I'm going to keep going because I'm a human. One other thing you're going to have to do is provide real logical and sensible feedback as to why people need this or want this. It's very easy to create statistics, and they are often quite meaningful. So when you do your research and when you come to write down your research, anecdotes, kind of explanations of collective feeling are often much more useful. If you are going to case study, if you feel that case studies are really strong, think about that case study being realistic. We often pick the most outlandish or unrealistic, for want of a better word, case study. And that's not your typical journey. Think about your typical user, the typical journey that they face, and how that can be the leverage that you use to get your bid. So think about actually how you're going to prove that people want it. Once the project is up and running, one of the things that funders now generally want to see is how are people involved? How do they make decisions? How are they involved in the impact measurement of it and the reviews of it? How are they involved in how it's publicized, who it's publicized to? What we're very much moving away from is a build it and they will come situation. It's go and find them, and together we will build this using the skills or the clout that you have running your organization. Not everyone will want to be involved on a deep level, but it doesn't mean that they don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean that they don't have ideas. Again, when you come to monitor or evaluate anything, do think about how you're going to gather those voices, and it wasn't just a yes, no tick box to get some statistics, because 100% of people could have thought something, but if you've only asked 3 people and all 3 of them agreed, it's not really a impactful assessment, really. Consider the partnership and the connections that you have. Think about how you word and frame that. So as an example, you do a luncheon club and you have an external agency come in to do chair-based exercises. That's a partnership and a connection. It's not just that we do all of this and there's chair-based exercises too. A, give the credit to the agencies you're working with, but B, part of that realism is also saying that we can't be everything. A funder would be very suspicious of an organisation that could literally claim they are absolutely everything and need no partners, no connection, no nothing, and that they could do everything on a dime. That's quite suspicious from the outside. So make sure that you talk about your partners and your connections. You don't have to promote them. You're not applying for funding for them, but do say that we work with local partners to provide whatever it is that we provide. Part of that partnership benefit and part of that discussion is also about you knowing what happens in your town. We're trying to not duplicate as much as we can. If there are opportunities for there is enough people to go around and we need an extra service, fine, that's great, that works. However, if you're creating something and something's happening down the road and you just want to do it differently or better, that's really screwing over both organisations, because funders are going to look at that and say, well, nobody really knows what's going on here, but also, why are they not working together? But also, why does this cost differently from that one? But also, where is the need? How is this going to work? It's not great PR for your organisation to come in and sweep in and take over another service, unless of course it's closed. But just be aware of that. Where is the next nearest one to us? And is it too close? Or actually, is it far enough away? Are there transport barriers? Are there barriers of geography? Are there issues where actually these people can't get here, so even though it's kind of across the road, that road is a dual carriageway and it's impossible to cross? So it's thinking about that element of, when is duplication okay? This has been a completely whistle-stop tour through current climate. The big kind of headlines are sustainability, being driven by the users, and making sure that it's realistic and not duplicating anything. WV are always here to help you have a look at your bid, work with you on what your project might be, take some time with you to really make sure that everything's all aligned so you've got the best chance you possibly could have. All that remains to say is good luck and wish you very happy bid writing. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.